So my name is Kelsey Dolge. I teach at New Century Academy in Hutchinson, Minnesota, and I teach about 130 6th through 12th graders, social studies.
Excellent. What interested you in using Project Pals?
So I had another teacher on my staff who brought it to our attention, and we did a PD with Project Pals last spring, and we kind of surveyed the staff after and said, how would you feel about implementing this? And I was all for it. I saw that you guys had a lot of templates for social studies, and I thought it was definitely something I could use in my class, given we are project-based school, and we're also going to look at the problem-based end of things. So project about fixing a problem in society that we care about, it fits perfectly with what I do in my geography course. And that's just one example, but yeah, it's kind of how it all got started. And personally, I found that there have been quite a few ways that I can use it in my class.
Yeah, could you show a project or a way that you've been using it in one way, and then after that show another project that illustrates a different way you've been using it?
Yep, so this is the first project that I built on Project Pals, and it's to integrate the Minnesota State Standards for Social Studies about Native American history, because that's a big part of our state's history. And what I did was I built a project addressing different parts of the standards so then I could encompass more of them within my project. And so I was just going through and showing that the very first panel that I looked at was myths and legends, religious beliefs, and celebrations, to address the cultural aspects of each tribe. And this is from one of my U.S. history students who let me borrow her work. And then we also addressed living arrangements and to address whether the tribe was nomadic or if they had more permanent residences in certain areas. This is where she goes into talking about how the dwelling worked and how it met the needs of the Native Americans who lived in it. So using the packed earth to insulate it. And since they're partially underground, their houses seem smaller than what they really were. And so addressing those traits. The next tab that we looked at was sustainability. So how did this group of people sustain themselves over the course of history? And then she gave her explanation here. They talked about specifically the decline of Native Americans due to disease and also genocide, and the biggest massacres occurring between the mid-1800s. And that kind of builds next because a lot of our standards do talk about European interaction with Native Americans. Then she was able to drag and drop in some visual aids to support her points. And the final piece that this one was not necessarily addressed in my history standards, but it was kind of my own curiosity and the way that I wanted the students to wrap up this project was to look at the tribe today. What are their numbers like? Do they have a reservation officially? And then the children, just like any other, they play, go to school, help out around the house, fishing, hunting, as a form of bonding. This answer, of course, had various outcomes depending on what tribe the kid looked at, and that was her final panel.
That's great. This is a great project. Yeah. Impressive. So what was kind of your experience, doing the project in here from a teacher perspective, and did you get any feedback from the students about their experience as well?
Overall, I think it definitely helped keep the kids accountable, because when you would see the project breakdown and you would see, one student had about 80% of the interaction, and then one student had 20% because they had the option of either individual or group projects. And there was about 2 days in the process where I literally pulled them and checked their progress. It was really great to evaluate for group projects, because sometimes when a group project comes in, you have two kids saying two different things. Either the student helped a lot, it was a great experience, or sometimes you have one student saying, I did all the work, and the other one saying, no, you didn't, I did all the work, and they kind of go back and forth. It's kind of hard to discern as a teacher of, in this situation, who's being accurate and who's portraying, and kind of who's telling the truth in essence. And so when I'd pull kids, the first member had done 80% of the interactions, and the other member had done 20. I was able to break it down and ask the kids, and most of them were like, oh yeah, she hasn't been interacting with the project as much, but she's been pulling our research, and they were able to tell me which parts that they had played in the whole experience. And so that was really awesome to see.
That's great. So it really helped motivate and kind of keep some accountability and transparency in that group project. So
yep, exactly.
That's great. Do you have any other projects you could share with us and kind of show how, your use of Project Pals evolved throughout the year?
Yep. And so the next one I'm going to show you is from my 11th and 12th grade geography class. And this is the solving a problem in society that we care about. And so these two students worked together, and they took on human trafficking as their topic of choice. So this is a template that is already uploaded into Project Pals. Here we go. They did a lot with the problem description and the scope, and including visual aids that can talk about. And their big thing was that, in essence, that this occurs everywhere. It's both national, it's international, and it's a global issue. And to be honest, it's underreported, so that makes it harder to enforce. So their problem description was very in-depth, the population that they researched. And because they found when they did their research on the problem of it, they pretty much had to sum it up with, there are people like someone who's been exposed to or has dealt with violence and trauma is more likely, but this is truly a global issue and there's not one single person that's more prone to this than another. So at least for my students, they really like these arrows. Like they like the connection piece there and they're able to say, oh, this led to this piece here. So they took a look at both, like as they got further into their project, they really started to get into like the idea of like international as well. So not just in the United States, but also what are international organizations doing with this? Like what can we do? Basically expressing their concern. Their get involved was probably one of my favorite parts though. They found a group that in essence is trying to help eliminate both human trafficking and sex trafficking within the country of Nepal. And it's called the Red Thread Movement. So they went around school and they asked for donations from students to buy one of these red thread bracelets, which then provides work to a woman or child in Nepal. And with every thread bought is another person that can potentially be impacted for the positive. Yeah, so they were walking around and trying to sell as many bracelets as they could.
That's wonderful.
That's really great.
That's really great to hear that they really brought that into the real world and made an impact in their school. I would suggest that just when they get the bracelets and everybody's wearing them, they can take photos of people's wrists and they can add that as well into here. So it just becomes part of the project.
Because they are wanting to do that here for their involvement gallery, but we just haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, wonderful. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Excellent. Has Project PALS enabled you as a teacher that's practicing project-based learning to do things that you weren't able to do before using Project PALS? Like, is there a benefit to it that you find to be pretty unique to implementing PBL in the classroom?
Most definitely. Given that I teach social studies, my content area is quite broad. And a lot of times what that would result in with projects in the past would be students turning in, like pages and pages and pages of research and some of it not amounting to anything, and organization of, how do we put this together on a poster board or how do we put this together here? Organization was a big thing that I had to work through with my students. And so the fact that they have templates and like assigned spaces of, hey, this is where I can plug this in, this is where to make sure that they feel like they're effectively using their time. I think that's the biggest thing because there have been times where I've had to kind of redirect a student and being like, is that really supporting like what your project is all about? Like they would have to like cut that research and they would almost like feel bad about that. Of like, oh, that was just wasted time. But now that they kind of know from the get-go of like, these are what the parameters are and this is what they're looking for, they're able to sort of zero in and really focus on what is this project supposed to be about.
That's great. So basically their ability to kind of identify what's important, right, in the problem or the project.
Exactly.
That increased by being able to focus on the material in here, do you think?
Yep, most definitely. And that's also been, I think, really good too for in cases like this project kind of became a launching board for these students. And so then they really wanted to because they were able to get their foundation set up, they were able to go around to students and more effectively communicate, this is what we're doing, this is what we want to see done, and this is what we're working on. So yeah, I really liked it for that purpose.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And there's many other methods that they can use. They can even use Google surveys and stuff like that they can include here. There's a lot of stuff that, you can incorporate here. How long do you take the students to do a project and how long it take you to actually prepare the template for them to start using it?
So of the projects that I created one for my U.S. history class, the Native American one, and then I also created ancient China project for my world history kids. I was able to create both of those in about the span of an afternoon during workshops. Adding in the directions is kind of what took the longest, but setting up the template and making that work for the students, that came pretty quickly. And then I think overall it depends on the length of the project that solving a problem in society that we care about. If the students did the first 4 tabs or whatever, I counted it for this is sufficient for project credit. I can give you credit for this in the classroom to get involved in the validation piece. Whereas if they wanted to go above and beyond and really make a case for a really strong grade. And so if they were one of them that kind of stuck with just the first 4 tabs, it took them I'd say about 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. If they were going above and beyond, it was about 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's great.
Like I said, these are my juniors and seniors, so they're the ones who have the most experience. So giving them 3 weeks for a project is really not too much time at all for a lot of them. Whereas with my 9th graders, I tend to keep it a little shorter. The Native American project they did there was about 2 weeks at most. And about a week and a half, we were starting to kind of think about calling it and saying, all right, we're moving on.
And if you compare their engagement when you were not using Project Pals versus when you're using Project Pals, what would you say?
I would say because it gives them that piece of organization that they're really looking for. I think it takes more of their attention towards the research and the content of the project as opposed to just how is it laid out. And so that keeps them interested because, like, I can't tell you how many times I've had a student who all of a sudden they print off the wrong size text from Google Docs and then they get frustrated, and then it's like, now I'm going to spend, 10 minutes complaining about how I have to rewrite this whole thing and redo this over something that's a little more like, it doesn't necessarily affect the content of it, but it kind of affects more of the aesthetic. And so the fact that they have the ability to like resize things and they have the ability to redesign it and change the layout as they see fit, I think that definitely focuses them more on the research part and more of like the content piece, which is obviously, as teachers, that's what we want for our students. We want them to get more involved with the academic material, not necessarily like just trying to make the project work.
And then having all that work centralized in one place for you to be able to go and review and kind of not only the analytics, but also the content that they created. Was it helpful to kind of have it all in one place from an administrative perspective in terms of evaluation and sort of monitoring their progress?
Oh yeah, like grading with Project Pals is super easy. I literally just have to go into the student name and I just match it up with my grade book. And so I go to, the next student in the grade book, just type their name here and then pull their project. And then I'm able to work off of that. And then, yeah, it's made it very organized and you never have to worry about losing a written response or like a student saying, well, I did that, I just didn't put my name on it, things like that. It kind of takes the human error out of it a little bit.